Okay, here we have Tomas and the Library Lady, and it's written by Pat Mora and illustrated by Raoul Codon. It was midnight. The light of the moon followed the tired old car. Tomas was tired too, hot and tired. He missed his own bed in his own house in Texas. Got a lot of information about Tomas from that first page, didn't we? Tomas was on his way to Iowa again with his family. His mother and father were farm workers. They picked fruit and vegetables for Texas farmers in the winter and for Iowa farmers in the summer. Year after year they bumped along in their rusty old car. "Mamma," whispered Tomas, "if I had a glass of cold water, I would drink it in large gulps. I would suck the ice. I would pour the last drops of water on my face." Wow, it sounds like he's really thirsty. You can remember times in the summer here in Oklahoma how hot it gets, can't you? I bet it's just like that in Texas. And even in the summer in Iowa. I wonder if any of you have ever been to Iowa before. Maybe you could find it on a map and see how far away it is from Texas. Tomas was glad when the car finally stopped. He helped his grandfather, Papa Grande, climb down. Tomas said, "Buenas noches," good night, to Papa, Mama, Papa Grande, and to his little brother Enrique. He curled up on the cot in the small house that his family shared with the other workers. Did you notice the Spanish word on there, buenas noches? Then right after it, it says good night. It's telling you what the word means in English. They're going to do that a lot in the book. When it's in Spanish, they're going to make the letters of the word kind of slanted. We call that italics, and that helps you see that it's in Spanish. And then a lot of times they'll tell you what it means if you keep reading. So if you don't know the Spanish word, that's okay. A lot of times it'll tell you. So let's keep reading and watch for more Spanish words. Early the next morning, Mama and Papa went out to pick corn in the green fields. All day they worked in the hot sun. Tomas and Enrique carried water to them. Then the boys played with a ball Mama had sewn from an old teddy bear. That's pretty clever. Took an old teddy bear and kind of rolled it up in a ball and sewed it and made a ball to play with. That's something you might try at home sometime. When they got hot, they sat under a tree with Papa Grande. "Tell us the story about the man in the forest," said Tomas. Tomas liked to listen to Papa Grande tell stories in Spanish. Papa Grande was the best storyteller in the family. "En un tiempo pasado," Papa Grande began, or once upon a time. See how they did that? En un tiempo pasado means once upon a time. On a windy night, a man was riding a horse through a forest. The wind was howling, woo, and the leaves were blowing, whish, whish. And all of a sudden something grabbed the man. He couldn't move. He was too scared to look around, and all night long he wanted to ride away, but he couldn't. How the wind howled, woo, and how the leaves blew, how his teeth chattered. And finally the sun came up. Slowly the man turned around, and who do you think was holding him? Tomas smiled and said, "A thorny tree." Papa Grande laughed. "Tomas, you know all my stories," he said. "There are many more in the library. You are big enough to go by yourself. Then you can teach us new stories." The next morning Tomas walked downtown. He looked at the big library. Its tall windows were like eyes glaring at him. Tomas walked around and around the big building. He saw children coming out carrying books. Slowly he started climbing up the steps. He counted them to himself in Spanish. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro. His mouth felt full of cotton. That's kind of a strange thing to say, isn't it? I wonder why his mouth felt full of cotton. I wonder what that means. Think about that a little bit. Tomas stood in front of the library doors. He pressed his nose against the glass and peeked in. The library was huge. I'm looking at that picture and thinking, I'm wondering if maybe he's nervous. Do you think? A hand tapped his shoulder. Tomas jumped. A tall lady looked down at him. "It's a hot day," she said. "Come inside and have a drink of water. What's your name?" she asked. "Tomas," he said. "Come, Tomas," she said. Inside it was cool. Tomas had never seen so many books. The lady watched him. "Come," she said again, leading him to a drinking fountain. "First some water. Then I will bring books to this table for you. What would you like to read about?" "Tigers? Dinosaurs," said Tomas. Tomas drank the cold water. He looked at the tall ceiling. He looked at all the books around the room. He watched the lady take some books from the shelves and bring them to the table. "This chair is for you, Tomas," she said. Tomas sat down. Then very carefully he took a book from the pile and opened it. I'm wondering what his first book from the library is going to be about. I wonder which one he chose. What would you choose if you were choosing your first book at the library? Ooh, there's a good clue. Look at the pictures. I bet I know what this book is about. Yep, Tomas saw dinosaurs bending their long necks to lap shiny water. He heard the cries of a wild snake bird. He felt the warm neck of the dinosaur as he held on tight for a ride. Tomas forgot about the library lady. He forgot about Iowa and Texas. Now, I like this picture here. You can see him riding on the dinosaur. Now, is that really happening? Is he really riding dinosaurs right now? Or is he using his imagination as he reads the book? What do you think? "Tomas, Tomas," said the library lady softly. Tomas looked around. The library was empty. The sun was setting. I think maybe do you think he fell asleep, or do you think he was just so interested in his books that he didn't realize how long he'd been there? I'm curious about that. The library lady looked at Tomas for a long time, and she said, "Tomas, would you like to borrow 2 library books? I will check them out in my name." Tomas walked out of the library carrying his books. He ran home, eager to show the new stories to his family. There's a word you might not have heard before. Eager. It says he was eager to show the new stories to his family. That means he was really excited, doesn't it? He can't wait. Papa Grande looked at the library books. "Read to me," he said to Tomas. First, Tomas showed him the pictures. He pointed to the tiger. "Que tigre tan grande," Tomas said first in Spanish, and then read in English. "What a big tiger." Oh, see, there, they did it again. They put some words in Spanish, but then they told us what they meant. "Read to me in English," said Papa Grande. Tomas read about tiger eyes shining brightly in the jungle at night. He roared like a huge tiger. Papa, Mama, and Enrique laughed. They came and sat near him to hear his story. That's pretty cool. Some days Tomas went with his parents to the town dump. They looked for pieces of iron to sell. Enrique looked for toys. Tomas looked for books. He would put the books in the sun to bake away the smell. Oh, you can imagine if you had to get the books from the dump. That means they're books that people threw away and thought they weren't any good anymore. And probably they're laying in there with garbage and stuff, right? So he's letting the sun kind of heat them up and maybe take some of that smell from the trash out of them. I think that's kind of sad that anybody throws away books. I wonder what they could have done with those books if they didn't want them anymore. Could they have done something else besides just throwing them in the trash? All summer, whenever he could, Tomas went to the library. The library lady would say, "First a drink of water, and then some new books, Tomas." On quiet days, the library lady said, "Come to my desk and read to me, Tomas." And then she would say, "Please teach me some new words in Spanish." Tomas would smile. He liked being the teacher. The library lady pointed to a book. "Book is libro," said Tomas. "Libro," said the library lady. "Pájaro," said Tomas, flapping his arms. The library lady laughed. "Bird," she said. Okay, so we learned 2 new Spanish words on this page, didn't we? Libro is book, and pájaro is bird. Cool. On days when the library was busy, Tomas read to himself. He'd look at the pictures for a long time. He smelled the smoke at an Indian camp. He rode a black horse across a hot, dusty desert. And in the evenings he would read the stories to Papa, Mama. Oops, I'm sorry, I misread that. Let's start over at the beginning of that sentence. And in the evenings he would read the stories to Mama, Papa, Papa Grande, and Enrique. It's okay to mess up once in a while when you're reading, and sometimes it's good just to start the sentence over again so you can figure out what you're reading. Even teachers mess up sometimes. Wow, I really like this picture, don't you? You can see how they show his imagination as he's reading the book and how he's picturing what's happening in the story. I like to do that too. Whenever I read a story, I like to picture what's happening in my mind. Even if there's not a very good picture in the book, I can make up my own pictures in my mind. One August afternoon, Tomas brought Papa Grande to the library. The library lady said, "Buenas tardes, señor." Tomas smiled. He had taught the library lady how to say, "Good afternoon, sir," in Spanish. Oh, see, it showed us what it meant, didn't it? "Buenas tardes, señora," Papa Grande replied. I wonder what that means. We know buenas tardes means good afternoon. And if she said buenas tardes, señor, and that means good afternoon, sir, and he said back to the lady, "Buenas tardes, señora," wonder what señora might mean. Maybe he said good afternoon. I'll let you think about that. Softly, Tomas said, "I have a sad word to teach you today. The word is adios. It means goodbye." Tomas was going back to Texas. He would miss this quiet place, the cool water, the many books. He would miss the library lady. "My mother sent this to thank you," said Tomas, handing her a small package. "It is pan dulce, sweet bread. My mother makes the best pan dulce in Texas." The library lady said, "How nice, how very nice. Gracias, Tomas. Thank you." And she gave Tomas a big hug. I bet that's kind of hard for Tomas to say goodbye to this library lady, don't you think? They've spent a lot of time together, and she's been really nice to Tomas. That's really nice that his grandfather gave him a chance to go by and say goodbye to her and give her a present too, isn't it? That night, bumping along again in the tired old car, Tomas held a shiny new book, a present from the library lady. Papa Grande smiled and said, "More stories for the new storyteller." Well, that was really nice that he was given a gift from the library lady. Wonder what Papa means. More stories for the new storyteller. Who was the old storyteller? And who's the new storyteller? Think about that. Tomas closed his eyes. He saw the dinosaurs drinking cool water long ago. He heard the cry of the wild snake bird. He felt the warm neck of the dinosaur as he held on tight for a bumpy ride. Oh, that's the very first book he got when he went to the library, isn't it? The book about dinosaurs. It looks like that's the one maybe she gave him as a gift. That's probably a very special book to him since it was the first one. What a thoughtful gift she gave him. Oh, here's a neat little thing at the end of your story. It says a note about the story. This picture here is a picture of Tomas Rivera, who was born in Crystal City, Texas in 1935. That's a long time ago, isn't it? Some of you math experts might want to do some math and see if you can figure out what year, how long ago that was. A migrant worker who valued education, Tomas Rivera became a writer, a professor. That's like what I do. I'm a professor. A university administrator, and a national education leader. When Dr. Rivera died in 1984, he was the chancellor of the University of California at Riverside. The campus library now bears the name of the boy who was encouraged to read by a librarian in Iowa. So this is kind of his story, isn't it? And did you notice that he didn't say library lady? He said librarian. That's what we call a person who works in the library, a librarian. I think that's a great book. And it's even more special when we know it's a true story that happened to someone. And maybe you know someone who has a similar story to that, who maybe has worked as a migrant worker or travels. I actually used to travel like that with my family when I was young. But we worked with horses instead of as farmers. So that's kind of interesting connection that I can make. Maybe you can think of a different connection to Mr. Rivera and his story.